I'm really honored to be here. I find myself among so many distinguished men and women that surpasses in knowledge and understanding way above, me. I should be the one sitting under you guys and learn. And here you have asked me to come and I speak, and I appreciate that. I am an immigrant from Iran, and I came here in 1973, and which I will discuss that. And I don't know if any of you saw a news clip on WLS. How many of you saw that? Okay, well, Chad Nesbitt's been a friend of mine for a long time, and we're on Facebook friend, and he was discussing about a particular issue, and I made a comment. I said, well, this is vetting the immigrant. It's not something new. It's been going on for a long time. And I have some reservation about all this uprising, if it has motivated them to do that, it's about something else. So then he asked me, would I be able to say that on TV? I said, I have no problem. So he made a phone call, and 2 times I dealt with Chad that he was on top of it so quickly, and called, and WLS called me, and we met the same day, bang, bang, And he really put a good job. Put the story, very good job, and about me. And so I hope I can contribute something, that you might not know. I doubt it. You guys are awesome. I did bring copies of my book with me. There's a couple of them, and if you wish to have it free, that's fine. If you want to donate, that's fine too. Not a problem. I'm not here to make a sale, bitch. So, but I do have a story to tell, and because I'm immigrant, I understand things about the issue of immigration. But before I do that, I want to just say something about myself. I came here in 1973. The way I came here was very, very unique. That was not part of my plan at all. The dream of coming into the United States, it was only a dream. It wasn't, I never saw it as a reality until it actually happened. After I graduated from high school, I took some English and some typing, and applied at many universities in Iran. I didn't actually pass any of those. So until an advertisement came up in the newspaper, the advertisement was from a merchant ship. It was a civilian commercial ship, and they were accepting students. So I applied to that, and next thing I know, I was supposed to go take the exam. The place was that they were taking the exam was at the Navy base. I suppose the Navy base had a space large enough for 300 or more students to go there, take the exam. And I did. 3 groups were chosen. One group consists of 25 people that this merchant ship they chose for themselves, and they were going to send the students to Belgium to study, get their education, and go back and work in a shipyard of some kind. Then there was another group, only 12 people were chosen. I was one of them. Navy decided to keep these 12s for themselves. Didn't even ask the question, do you want to come to the Navy? Next thing I know, you guys come here with me, and then we'll go cut our hair and measure us for a uniform. And the rest of them, of course, they went home. That's how I got involved, into the Navy. And I debated on the idea of, I didn't even apply for this. And later on, I found out there were actually 12 people short, maybe 12 people that left the previous group. And the reason I know that is because we went and joined a previous group that they were already going through training. And by the time we went there, the training is finished. So I never got any military training whatsoever, yet I joined the Navy. And from there, we went to the English class. Took 15 weeks of English. The school were chosen for us as to where we're going to be going. Out of the group that we were in, there were 25 people, or 26 people were chosen to go to the Citadel military school. We came to the United States in the spring of '73, and we went to Lackland Air Force Base for English training and passing what we call it, a TOEFL exam before you go to our university. All of that went okay, no problem. Still no military training until we got to the Citadel. Big surprise was ahead of us. Nobody ever told us or taught us about hazing. When we got there, they started cursing and calling names and language. I was not accustomed to those things. None of us were. Remember, in a country like Iran, it's not like United States. Men and women, except in the universities, they are segregated. They go to a separate school. So there is a lot of social stuff that in a real world we had never experienced. And I trusted my government as I would trust God. We were so loyal to our government. Well, I loved him. I loved the Shah. That was the Iranian Shah. And so we made several complaints to the naval attaché in Washington, D.C., and they sent some people and trying to talk to the university, the staff, that these guys are not familiar with all these things. So it eased up just a little bit, but not much. They had a system to go by, and we really couldn't understand it. Needless to say, many of us didn't like it. And about 10 of us resigned. We went to Washington. We were there for 10 days, waiting for the Navy officers to get in touch with Iran so we can go back home and resign. Out of those 10, one of the guys, just to give you extent of the hazing, in the middle of the night, the freshman cadets, they attacked his room, put him in a laundry bag, and dragged him from the 4th floor of the barracks all the way to the bottom of the quadrangle, and left him with tied the knot and left him there. This guy was scared to death. So when we went to the Navy, finally they came to us and said, listen, you want to go home, that's okay, but here's the problem. They're going to put you in prison. Yes, that's exactly what I said. Well, as long as they were attacking me, that was not a problem. If I had to go to prison, okay. But when they said your dad is going to go to prison too, because he signed for you, and they're going to put him in prison as well. and they're going to take his house away from him. So basically, they threaten all of us that if we go back home, it will not be very pleasant. Well, two guys, they decided, I said, I don't care. If you're going to kill me, I'm not going back. One of those guys was the guy who was in the laundromat. So these two went home. The rest of us, we became like a sheep. And we decided to come back to the Citadel. It was all over the campus that the Iranians are stuck in here. And if you go back, they will go to prison. And that was exactly what they said. 5 months passed. We heard from those two guys. There was no such a thing as prison. It was all lies. You can imagine our loyalty. It was like somebody stabbed you in the back. Then I realized that I couldn't work for a government like that. And I said, if I'm going to go back, I'm going to stay here as long as I can before I go back. So I started failing my exams on purpose. And until the following year, then I met a younger, and things changed. And I saw, hey, that opportunity, maybe I will stay here instead. And that's exactly what took place. So I went to the summer school to catch up with all the stuff that I was behind to graduate on time. So that was how it happened. It wasn't my intention from the beginning. It just all happened, bang, bang, I stayed here. And
I'm having troubles today.
My story of staying in this country.
I'm getting background music. I apologize for that.
That's fine.
It doesn't want to turn off.
That's fine. My story of staying in here was God intended. Really, it was God intended. When I was born, I was a Muslim, but I became a Christian as a result of that. And when later on down the road, there are some events took place that actually 100% proved that to me. That was God's intent. About 30 years later, in 2004, well, I've been hearing the government giving amnesty, inviting everybody to come back to the country, that you're forgiven, and you can come back, we need you here. And many people gone. And in 2004, I decided to go back for the first time. I was there for 3 weeks. I had to apply. But by that time, by the way, when I decided to stay in this country, I said, I'm going to do everything legally. I immediately applied for my green card, and immediately after that, for my citizenship. So in 1983, I got my citizenship to this country. And so in 30 years later, when we went back, I was there for 3 weeks, no problem whatsoever. I said, wow, they were right. I missed 30 years of going and coming back. By the way, I knew if I had to stay in this country, I may have to forsake all my family. I may not ever see them. So I knew that when I made that decision. You're talking about things are being tough. I've been through it. That I can tell you. I've experienced it personally. Then in 2004, when I went back, I said, wow, I missed it for 30 years, And since then, my father and my mother, they've been here in this country for several times. And in one of those years, they brought my younger brother, and he's here in the United States with us. And the book will actually goes into a lot more details than we have time to discuss. But I told myself, I'm going to go back the following year, not realizing that the government over there, they're technologically, they're so slow, they're not as advanced. So it took 4 months for them to realize that I came and gone. So the following year, as soon as I go in, I turn in my passport, they punch it into the computer, my name gets called in at the airport. To make the story short, they took my passport away and I was stuck there for 2 months. My vacation was 2 weeks, but they wouldn't let me leave the country. I went to the military courthouse, got my amnesty paper, but the Navy wanted more. The Navy wanted to basically harass me in any way or shape they could. They said, we need some money. All the money we spend on you, you're gonna have to pay back. So I said, well, how much do we owe you? They said, well, 4,000. Then it changed to 10,000. Then it changed to 20,000. Then it changed to 40,000. This going crazy. Basically, they were dodging me. And then I had acquired $40,000. Now I had to transfer the money from America to Iran. There is no banking relationship, so I had to go through the Europe and then from there. And as I was thinking about how I was going to do this, 2 lies surfaced. One was when I was at one of the lieutenants or commander's office, the commander tells his lieutenant, Mr. Jafari, why don't you write a letter for Mr. Rabiipour so he doesn't have to go back and forth all these times. Going back and forth, it was 2.5 hours one way from where my dad is stationed to the Navy. Lieutenant turned around right in front of his commander in the same room. He said, Mr. Rabiipour, you might as well go home. The letter will not be written today. We'll call you. When I saw a lieutenant being so disrespectful to the commander in the same room, then I knew there was something was up. Immediately, within a day, a phone call came in. They called my sister, and my sister called me. They said, someone from a retirement section of the Navy wants to talk to you. I said, retirement section? What do they want from me? So I called them. They said, we cannot discuss this over a phone. I want you to come to an old Navy base at so-and-so place, and we'll see you on Saturday. I said, okay. On Thursday, I just happened to be in the same area. I asked my brother-in-law, I said, where is this place? He said, actually, it's right up here. I said, let's go check it out. As it was a sort of like a FBI or secret police or something to that nature. As soon as we go through the gate, this soldier runs to us. He said, what can we help you? I said, well, we're here to see about section 1394. Oh, security. I said, no, retirement. There is no retirement here. It's on the other side of town. I said, okay. He said, why don't you go through the other building? Somebody will help you. Well, he directed us to go through the yard to another building. This building was about almost the size of maybe 4 times, 5 times this in here. 1 table, 1 chair, 1 phone. And this guy was there. Half dark. And the guy said, what can we help you with? I said, well, we're here to see section 1394 about the retirement. I said, well, there is no retirement. He said, let me call him, check on it. So he picked up the phone and called that number. The The phone rang. Nobody answered. As soon as he hung up, I said, sir, my appointment is not till Saturday. We'll come back at that time. When I said that, I said, let's go. We came out of the building, and I told my brother-in-law, this was a trap. I said, if I would have gone in, I probably would never see the daylight. That's what they were planning to do. The very next day, I escaped. This was like a puzzle coming together. Everything was coming together. I had some people coming to me and say, Saiid, we're going to help you. And so that very next day, Friday, I cashed enough money. I met with some people. I said, I'm going to give you X amount of money for you to help me to get to Turkey. And then when I get to the United States, I'll pay the rest of it for you. They agreed. So that very night, the next day, 12 o'clock midnight, Friday, we left, driving the car all night. Now this is the part that really gets interesting. You can imagine my heart is pounding, okay? You're escaping. And the people who are taking you, they're smugglers, okay? You cannot trust them. And you have all this money that's in the trunk of a car. They could have taken the money, they could have left us hanging in the middle of the road, and I wouldn't even know who they were. Fortunately, God gave me a sense of doing the right thing, so I asked for their driver's license and made notation and gave it to my mom and dad. I say if something happened, then you know who that is, who did it. And well, 5 o'clock, by 5:30 in the morning, the car breaks down. And we're in the middle of nowhere. The car breaks down. Pop the hood up to see what the problem is. The belt was broken in half. We're almost half an hour away from the town and in the middle of a two-lane highway with almost nothing around us. What do? This is what I said. And remember, I'm a Christian. I said, God, you didn't bring me out of Egypt for me to be drowned in the Red Sea. You got something for me. I said, would you please show me what that is? Got in the car. We drove about quarter of the mile to an unpaved parking lot. As we got out of the car, and I see an old clay-looking building. And as I approach, the store was closed, the place was closed, but you could see through the iron bars. Two of the back walls, different shapes and size of the belt, hanging there. What was our problem? The belt was broken in half. And I said, okay, well, it's about, close to 5:30. We're going to have to stay till about 7 o'clock until someone come open this door for us to fix the problem. This is what gets really, really interesting. In a matter of 10 minutes, while we're standing there scratching our head, a private car drives in. We all have cars. And if I ask every one of you, you have a spare tire, all of you say yes. If I ask you if you have a spare tire, nobody will raise their hand. And even if you did, it would not be a right size for my situation at the right time. 5:30 encounter with God. God sent this private car. My driver went to him, said, do you by any chance have a spare tire? He said yes. We paid the man, bought a belt, put it on, took off. Now this took place prior to me going over the mountain. You see, that was more dangerous ahead. Okay, the danger was still ahead. But this gave me a peace of mind. God was telling me, Saiid, I've got your back. Don't worry. And would you believe from that point on, I was just pretty much dancing. and I was praising God through the whole thing. And of course, there are other events that has taken place. When I got into Turkey, I was on horseback riding, somebody was helping me, and we got into Turkey, and I had to turn myself in to the police department there. There at the police department, my old airline ticket was already expired. It's no good. I didn't know what was the phone number to call as far as the airline goes to make another reservation. I called the U.S. Embassy. I'm not going to go through all that, what took place, but it was a resistance from a U.S. Embassy at the beginning because I went there illegally. But then I had to make some phone calls, and someone told me if I have a confirmed ticket to my destination and my American passport, they will aid you to your destination. I said, great, that's exactly what I wanted to know. And would you believe, I'm standing at the police department, the phone rings. I have not told my wife my problem. The police picks up the phone and says, I think it's your wife. I get the phone, he said, I've got the airline on the other line. When would you like for me to make a reservation for you? And we make a reservation. She gave me confirmation, and the people at in Turkish, they helped me greatly, and the ball started rolling, and I made it back home. So do I understand immigration? Do I understand, hardship? Yes. TV2 from Denmark called me the other day. They said they saw me on Fox 8, and they thought I would be interested in talk to them. And I said, and they wanted to know about the immigration issue. I said, well, let me ask you this. How do you feel about this? And she said, well, I can't say that because I'm not a citizen. You're a citizen, you have a good story, we'd like to hear your opinion. I said, well, that's great that you're not a citizen. I need to ask you this question. I said, do you feel like that coming to the United States, someone has to sponsor you if you're working? Oh, yes, definitely. Oh, yes, absolutely. I said, what about if you come to visit someone with family members or go to school? Somebody has to write a letter of invitation? Oh, yes, definitely. Then I said, let me ask you this. How do you feel about this country not permit you to come in for a short period of time? That's their right. That is their right. So as an immigrant, understand that. Do you see what I'm saying? The immigrants understand that. So all the chaos, all the commotion that you hear, they are using a situation like that for other agendas. That's been my feelings. There is anytime, I worked for Radio Shack for 32 and a half years. We have had many CEOs coming and going. And every time we had a CEO, the plan changed. We take a pause and change the situation. I understand Mr. Trump. As a CEO of this country, he's coming. He said, let's evaluate ourselves. Let's see what are we doing is wrong. To be honest with you, we've had problems in this country about immigration. Mr. Obama himself, he said that we have problems. He had promised he was going to do it. I heard it in another speech, Mr. Clinton said that. None of them did anything about it. our immigration system, except of those who are getting visa to come to this country, with the exception of that, is weak. The reason I say that is because you come in here in this country, your visa expires, nobody comes after you. Nobody checks during the whole entire time to check to see if you're here or working in another place. Nobody checks. So we have no idea where they're at, what they're doing, what's going on. And especially if it is illegal, we absolutely have no clue because there is no record anywhere. So we have problems. We definitely have problems. Mr. Trump, this is not something new. He's been campaigning for over a year about this. And suddenly everybody comes out and says, oh my God, like it happened yesterday. He's been talking about it for over a year. That's what he was going to do. So if I were still immigrant in a sense of with a green card holder, I would pay attention. I wouldn't use during that time to go back home. Because I know what could happen. I may not make it back. And even so, even if I did go home, 3 months, he didn't say forever. So what's a big deal? I get to enjoy my family for extra few months. That's it. I mean, people that I go to school with or work with, they understand. It wasn't something that I, created. It happened. So, if you are a green card holder, you don't need to go. And if you're taking the risk to go, bear in mind, you have to follow the rules. Now, here's the thing. I've talked to a lot of people, and many of my friends are good Christian people. Where is the compassion? We, as an American, were not bad people to put extra pressure or hardship on our immigrants. We are supposed to be a beacon of hope for the whole entire world. Oh yes. And they even make a quotation from the Bible. Did Jesus did? Jesus loved? Jesus visited? Jesus accepted? And we should be doing exactly just like that. Love. They fail to see, this is what they fail to see. Matthew 22, at the beginning of that, it says, the kingdom of heaven is like a king having a wedding for his son. He prepares the banquet, and he goes tell his servants to go invite all the people who are being invited to come in, that everything is ready. Let's celebrate. They go, the invited guests refuse. They come back, tell the king, they're not coming. Go back one more time, tell him the food, the banquet, everything is ready. Please, you're invited, come. They make some excuses. Someone says, I gotta go take care of business. Somebody says, I've got to go take care of my parents. And some of them, they even take the servants and beat them and kill them. Those were the prophets. And they come back, report. And the king gets angry. And he goes and burns the cities and kills those murderers. And they come back and say, hey, we still have this huge room with all this stuff. He said, go and invite everyone. Highways, byways, and bring everybody in. They do that. And they said, we still have room. What else? He said, go get good and bad. Everyone bring them in. the place gets packed. So the king goes visit every single person. He sees one without the garment, the wedding garment. And he says, what are you doing? How did you get in? How did you get in that you are without the garment? The person was speechless. Says, get him, tie him up, and throw him in the outer darkness where there would be weeping and gnashing of the teeth. Was God had compassion? You know, you could use that. Where is God's compassion? Why didn't he let everybody in just the way they are? If God has rules, can't we have rules in here? What is wrong with having rules? Hey, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I love rules. If it wasn't because of rules, it would be a chaos. So, I went through the immigration policies and read, and it's not easy to come to this country. You got to follow a process. You got to follow a process. Got forms you got to fill out. The immigration form. You got there's rules, and when you come in here, you got to follow the rule. It's just that simple, and that's all what Mr. Trump is saying. And to be honest with you, it's been like this forever, but this is the only time it's been publicized by Mr. Trump. He strongly said, this is what I'm going to do. And he's doing it. See, he's a man of action. He's the man that he's going to get things done. I am so glad that somebody not only is just saying, they're doing something about it. I have great hopes. My expectations is a lot about our president. I think he will do great things. I really believe he will do great things. Now, if I sit down and talk to you about that, if you were a Democrat, you will find everything that I said to create an excuse to attack me or say something negative. What about this? What about that? That's what they do. That's what they do. I am looking forward to this president to make some changes for the good of all. For the good of all. And I hope what I'm here to say it becomes an inspiration to all of you that we're on the right track. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Yes, ma'am.
I don't so much have a question, but I would like everyone to know, I met Saiid in 2012 at the early voting site at the Fairview Library, and we became friends at that time, and that's when I learned about his story. But what I want you to know, in addition to this, is he served as a party judge and a chief judge in our election services for our election, so he has been active in that. And you need to read this book. I'm serious, you need to read this book.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
What is the role of these groups like the Muslim Brotherhood in their relationship with our government? Is it positive?
Muslims.
Negative, or?
Muslims. There are so many different sects. You hear Hamas. You hear Hezbollah. You hear Mujahideen. These are different groups in different countries. In Egypt, it's Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood. These are all fanatic group of people that is sort of like a Democrats and Republicans. They sort of don't like each other. But when it comes against outside of the country, they join together, become one. So Muslim Brotherhood is in Egypt, Hamas is in Lebanon, Mujahideen is in Afghanistan. You know, all these groups of fanatic people that everybody wants to have a power in their country. They want to do something to benefit them. They don't care about anybody else. They just want to benefit them.
So all these groups that are involved with our government, they're there to influence,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
to benefit themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a Muslim clergy that I listened to many years ago, 20 years ago. He was from Canada. And he said this. He said, when your group is a small, don't say anything. Stay quiet until you grow. Once your numbers grow large enough, then you have an influence. You can change things. They know our system of voting, so that's what they're doing.
So that's what's happened in our country over the last 40 or 50 years.
Absolutely. You know, the more immigrants that we have. By the way, Mr. Trump is fixing to, there is a bill is going to be passed, I think, by Tom Cotton and somebody else about adjustment on the immigration, number of the people coming to this country, and they rightfully have to do that. Otherwise, this country, majority of them is going to become immigrant, and they're going to change our culture altogether. Right now, one of the biggest problems we're facing today is clashes of cultures. You go to Newborn, Michigan, you'll see exactly what I mean. You know, police doesn't even go there. They follow Sharia law, they follow their rules, and they believe that their way is better. That's the way it is. And they're going to change it. You watch TV in England, in France, and Belgium. They have destroyed the European countries. They have absolutely destroyed it. And they can stand right in front of you on the street and burn their flags and use cuss words about anybody else, and police will not even interfere. Wouldn't say anything. And they want to come here and change ours.
They're not assimilating. That's the problem. In France, I was in France 50 years ago.
Yep.
When the Algerian rebels were in there, and that now 40% of France is Muslim, and they live by their own codes.
We need to learn from other people's mistake, and not to allow, you know. And Mr. Trump is correct. If you come to this country, respect our flags. Oh, talking about flags, let me show you. By the way, these are some letters that I had to ask Senator Jesse Helms to help us to bring my parents to come here. And there is this is what I want to show you. America's Creed. This was given to us at my citizenship in 1983. I still have it. In the United States of America, as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy in a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. And therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, and to respect its flags. and to defend it against all enemies. That was our pledge of allegiance to this country when we had to do that. Now here we have these people that come in burning our flags and they're disrespectful to our laws and our Constitution, and they think they're doing us a favor. And they think we should just roll over and say, okay, you win. You know,
So maybe you can comment on this. I get that we talked, I do a great deal of international traveling, and I think that, and my wife's an immigrant. She got her citizenship about a few years after yours. And what I find interesting is it's almost to the point that if you travel a lot, the people who are complaining and people who are doing things of this nature either are stupid or they're totally naive what goes on in other countries. Because I know, like, for example, many places where I travel, you have your passport on you or your cedula or your ID card, and if you don't, they don't say, oh, I'll write you a ticket or you got to report. They have a paddy wagon sitting on the side of the road, and they put you in the paddy wagon. And when the paddy wagon gets full, they take you to the prison. And that's the way it works in a lot of countries. And we're like and they profile, you know. They look at people, I usually get through because I look like I don't do anything bad, but you know, we have such archaic laws compared to other countries, or they have archaic laws, however you want to say it. But my experience has been a lot of people kind of laugh at us because we take it so loosey-goosey that it's just, yeah, come on up here and take advantage of it. This is like a gravy train.
right.
And that's their attitude is if you can get in, man, you got it home free, you know. And we think it's a terrible thing to stop people and ask for an ID. That's done everywhere in the world. Have you been anywhere where they've not stopped you and asked you? Or, yeah,
I have been one of those fortunate people. I've never been stopped. You know, I've never been stopped, but I don't mind it. I've understood that they're doing their job, so I never questioned or felt being discriminated against.
but that's here in the United States, right? Have you been stopped in other countries?
No,
It's amazing.
no, no.
The problem is we have laws, but the laws aren't enforced.
Correct.
That's true.
That's the problem.
That's exactly
That's the
right.
biggest
Right.
problem.
That's exactly right.
We're supposed to be a sovereign nation, and our borders have to be secure, or we're not.
Exactly.
We're not a nation,
You
as
see,
long as we have right today.
what they want, what they really want, the global, you hear that a lot, globalization, they want to have all borders opened up. You know, for Mexico, for them not to have border, they look at our country as their country. They can come over here, work, and put all the money back there. They're actually benefiting from this. They're benefiting. Now, I'm not saying that their guys are bad or anything. They are absolutely awesome people there. But Mr. Trump is correct. He wants things for American people, America and Americans first. I love that. I really love his attitude. And I support him 100%.
We have another difficulty in our country, and that is poor education in our public schools. The younger generation is not learning what you just read to us, okay? They're into sports, they're into who knows whatever. But as Reagan said, you know, democracy is only good for one generation. It's not automatic for the next. And if we don't teach the young people that are coming up, we don't have a country left. They're also burning flags. It isn't immigrants that are burning flags. We have American young people who are doing those things.
They're doing it out of
And they're not
ignorance.
getting
That's
a
correct.
decent education.
Well, there's no
Maybe
civics
it'll-
classes anymore. They don't teach civics in
Well,
schools.
why? Why aren't we questioning that? Maybe Mrs. DeVos, or
We know
whatever, however
why.
you say her
We know
name,
who's in
maybe
control.
she'll correct this. But I mean, this is a serious problem in our country.
I agree. Yes, sir.
I lived in Egypt for almost 6 years in Egypt and worked in Egypt and in Israel. My wife and my daughter were there. I was on a diplomatic passport. They were on a regular U.S. passport, so they had to go every 90 days to get their visa renewed every 90 days for the entire years that we lived there. And it was just a way of life. If you didn't do it, they come knock on your door and take you to jail.
That's right.
And we don't do anything in this country if
Right.
if you don't check in when your visa runs out.
Yep.
But it's, the other countries do it.
Right. Even, and my point was like, even the very poorest developing countries, as you're saying, a lot worse off than us, they do it. They have systems in place and they enforce it, but we don't. Because it's not being
The other
implemented.
thing I admire about Egypt is that Hosni Mubarak, who they threw out, our government helped overthrow him. They were beginning to have a drug problem. So he went on national TV. He says, effective tomorrow morning, if anybody is caught coming into this country with any form of drugs, they will be arrested, they will be tried, they will be convicted, and they will be hung on the same day that they're stopped. And 2 days later, or 3 days later, on national TV, you woke up one morning, there's 10 gallows up there with 10 people hanging at the gallows. They had drugs they brought in. They kept that on TV. Nothing said, just that image on TV 24 hours. But you mentioned drugs to somebody, they would leave. They walk away from, they don't even want to talk about drugs in that country.
Excuse me, is this the kind of justice system you advocate for us?
No, I'm saying that I think that's good.
You do?
What he did. I mean,
Do you think it's good for the leader of a country to say, we're going to, if we catch
No,
we're
that's
going to try you,
extreme.
convict
That's
you, and kill
extreme,
you.
but what I'm saying is he didn't allow drugs and he used that as an example. It's very extreme. I don't advocate that, but I'm telling you what they did.
Yeah.
And the result of it was that everybody in that country is afraid. I mean, you even talk about drugs, they'll walk away from you.
Oh, yeah.
Is it good for a population of a country to be afraid like that?
Just could everyone be.
It's not good to have anybody that extreme. It is good to control the drugs.
I agree.
Stop the drugs. I'm not advocating that we should go out and hang people without a trial,
Okay.
basically, which is what he did. No, that's very extreme. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that they recognized they had a drug problem and he acted to stop it.
Like they're acting in the Philippines right now.
Yeah.
In a similar sense, yeah.
I believe they're doing it in an extreme, which is wrong. I agree with you. What they are doing to control is part of their culture. I wish they would have done it in a different way than hanging people or killing people. It's not necessary. You can still accomplish what you need without destroying somebody's life. That's what you're saying. We can accomplish that we don't need to necessarily to hang him or kill them.
No. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
but
that's
the thing I'm saying is that country has no drug problem.
Well, I would say there is drugs, unfortunately, just about everywhere. I thought United States did not have a drug problem until I saw it with my own eyes, how they come in, how they manipulate. I was at the Citadel, a military school, strict school, okay? Very strict school. You wouldn't expect drugs there, right? I saw a friend of mine, I said, how do you manage to stay up all night to study, and the very next day you're in a classroom like you're alert? He said, Saiid, take this. Don't tell anybody. He gave me a pill. I had no idea what it was. I took it. Man, I stayed up till about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with my eyes wide open. I couldn't go to sleep. I said, I'm going to be dead the very next day. I better get some rest. Would you believe the very next day in a classroom, my eyes were open like this, you know. There are unfortunately, things going on that we're not looking for those things, but it's there. It's there. Even in Iran, who prosecute is there. So many people are on drugs. So many people are on drugs. They know how to get it. When I went back home, during the Ayatollah Khomeini, who closed all the cinemas and the alcoholic beverages or ABC stores, he closed on all of that. What do you think the message was? To get rid of filth, right? I go over there, everybody asks me, hey, do you want some drink? I went to some of my relatives' house. They all men go to one room. What are they doing? Smoking hashish. Do you want to join us? I said, no. You follow what I'm saying? Even in a country who is so radical, it's there. Somehow or the other. Our prison system, they get it. How they get it, I have no idea, because I'm not involved into that kind of stuff. But it's there. It's a very unfortunate thing, and one of the problems is Mr. Trump is addressing is controlling the flow of drugs through the borders. If you can control this, then you can control the people.
And the wall will be a big deterrent to the drug industry.
Yes.
Could you comment, I was able to read parts of the Quran, and I, of course, read the Old Testament and the New Testament several times. As an ex-practicing Muslim, the Quran is very harsh in my interpretation of how you treat life. And it's kind of like the Old Testament on steroids. As a practicing, would you consider yourself a secular, is there such a thing as a secular Muslim, or how do you compare your faith in when you were Muslim to Christianity as far as the philosophy? I mean, is it like, just your comment on that, if you would, please.
Sure. Growing up in Iran under Shah, the rules were different. The Islamic clergies, they didn't have that much power. So when you go to mosque, you basically learn how to worship God. And I would say I never saw or had any bad experiences during my upbringing back home under Shah. And we really never read the Quran back home because it was in Arabic and we were a Farsi-speaking people, so we didn't take that, into heart. I would say I was a what do you call that? Someone moderate, okay? And due to the fact that I never had any bad experiences, I thought the Muslims are awesome. I thought they were absolutely God's people. And based on my understanding was, yes, there were Jews, there were Christians, and the seal of the Prophet was the Muhammad, and the Quran was his book. So I took it as the most complete religion. Until I came here. I wanted to know why Americans are not like me, like Christian, like Muslims. So I started beginning to read the Gospels. My eyes were open when I read the story of Christ being beaten up, crucified, spat upon, tortured, and his response was, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And this is what I told myself. Who is this person who talks like that? I want to get to know that because I was never taught. You were taught that if you do something wrong, you get punished immediately. Sword for eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the way it was. See, most of the Islamic doctrine actually comes directly from Judaism, directly from the old fashion, except is twisted, totally twisted. Much of the Old Testament about the sacrifices, it all pointed to Christ. In a Muslim, they copy exactly the same thing, except it does not have the same meaning whatsoever. None whatsoever. I talk about that in my book, that the meaning of the sacrifice doesn't have the same meaning. There much of this stuff is inside of that is exactly twisted. Twisted is a form of iniquity. That's what God in the Old Testament directed to the Israelites, that your iniquity, you say with your mouth that you love me, but your heart is turned to other gods. Twisted. And of course, the result of that was the punishment. And punishment in the Old Testament was not a blanket of, this is what I'm going to do every time. It was pointing to His holiness, that I am so holy I cannot put up with junk. That's why no one can go to heaven unless they have a righteousness. And this righteousness comes through only Christ. If you have a cancer, you go take the particular medicine to cure that cancer. The cure of sin, no other religion has it except Christ. In John chapter 6, verses 55, 54 or so, it says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will not have eternal life. John the Baptist calls it, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is exactly the same Passover lamb in the Old Testament, where the death angel were coming, and they will eat the sacrifice, the lamb, and put the blood on the doorpost. And when the angel comes, angel of death comes, we'll see that, will passes over. It's all related. They're all related. And Muslims don't have it. Muslims don't have it. If you ask them, how are you going to get to God? I'll do my best. I just pray a lot more. I pay alms. I do this and that. You can't do it. No one can. The scripture says all.
It's a rule of law. It's like the Old Testament. It's a rule of law. The Quran and the beliefs that are adopted are law. There's no love involved. It's not a loving God. It's a God with rules and regulations you got to live by. Isn't it true that most Muslims do not read the Quran? You mentioned that you did. But what most of them read are what Muhammad wrote, which has a name which I can't remember, but what he wrote as to guides for them for the Muslims to live by.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a bad, bad man.
Well, when you read the history of the Islam or Muhammad, when he was in Mecca, he was faced with a lot of oppositions. He practically had to escape to go to Medina. It was in Medina where his group, grew, and then he became strong, and he went back and captured Mecca. Yasser Arafat did exactly the same thing with a peace treaty with Israel. They go shake hands and have peace, but then they say, hey, we need time to regroup, come together, and then go back. That's the typical things. Thank you.
We need to thank our speaker.
All right.
And then we need, of course, to quietly exit so they can clean this place up and leave a tip. And be sure to leave a tip. And lunch starts in about 20 minutes.
Should we stay for lunch then? We get lunch too?
Mark Crawford called the other night at the house, and he just wanted me to let everybody know that he was planning on coming, but he had a death in the family, and that's why he wasn't here today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope I said something that it was an inspiration or help, because I like I said before, I'm surrounded with so many intelligent people, you know, that comparing to you guys, I'm nothing. You know, I'm nothing. I'm just humble, and I'm so grateful to be among you guys. Okay, thank you.